the Beyond Sleep Training podcast, a podcast dedicated to sharing real tales of how people have managed sleep in their family outside of sleep training culture. Because sleep looks different with a baby in the house. And because every family is different, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to take. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is being recorded, the Kalkadoon people. I pay my respects to the elders of this nation and the many other nations our guests reside in from the past, present and emerging. We honour Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the unique cultural and spiritual relationships to the land, water and seas, as well as their rich contributions to society, including the birthing and nurturing of children. Welcome back to the Beyond Sleep Training podcast. Today's guest is an amazing online presence. Her name is Emily Holdaway, but many of you probably know her by a few other names. She was originally from the page Raising Ziggy, which is where I first got to know Em. And since then, she's moved on to the name officially Em, or Emelitza, is another name that some people might have seen around the traps. Em has been a really breath of fresh air online for her honesty and ability to tell the raw truths of parenting with babies and young kids in the house, while also being able to share in the beauty and the strength and courage it takes to also follow your heart during that time. So I feel really lucky that we've got Em on today. So welcome, Em.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Carly. It's really cool to be here. Yes, the name thing, I'll just quickly touch on that. When the internet first turned up, I was 15, and my mum said, you can't use your real name on the internet because it's full of dodgy strangers. And they used to call me Emelitza Little Pizza because my name's Emily, but Emelitza Little Pizza with pepperoni. And so I used it on the internet, and that's what I've used for the last 21 years.
Starting to date yourself. I'm with you, so yeah, it's fine. That's awesome. So Emelitza was where you first came onto the internet?
Yeah, and then Raising Ziggy, the whole reason the page was called Raising Ziggy was I didn't set out to write to be a parenting blog or anything like that. I was sharing day to day on my normal Facebook page, and my friends were saying, write a blog, I need to hear this. And so when my partner and I were talking about writing a blog, I wanted the name to encapsulate what it was. I didn't want to be how to mum, because you just don't. And so I settled on Raising Ziggy because that's what we were doing. We were raising Ziggy, and the story that I told through that page always came back to Raising Ziggy. It wasn't about telling other people how to do it. It was sharing what we were doing as we were doing it.
I love that. That's exactly what I think was the beauty of the page too, because you could share your raw truths with them being your truths. They didn't have to resonate with everybody in your audience. I think that's where you were able to keep your honesty. And I really appreciated it because I saw a lot of myself in a lot of the stories that you were writing as well. So that was really refreshing. So I guess for our episode today, I want to hear, before you had Ziggy, how were you thinking you were going to be handling sleep in your family?
Bro, it wasn't even a conversation. Before we had Ziggy, sleep. Who talks about sleep? We talked about what school we wanted him to or her to go to because we didn't know. We actually, the decision to have a child was one that we talked about probably more than what we do when that child arrives. My partner and I, when I first met AJ, I was coming out of quite a toxic, traumatic relationship. And I was very anti the whole idea of the nuclear family. I was anti the idea of a relationship. I said to him when we first started going out, this is going to be a bit of bump and grind, mate, but it's not going to go any further than that. And then when it went further than that, I straight from the get-go said to him, we're not doing the kids thing. Kids have never been in my future that I saw for myself. And I put that out there on the table quite early on in our relationship, that if kids were something he saw in his future, then he was with the wrong person for that future. And I held on to that for 8 years. So we were together for 8 years, and we were a childless couple. We had a great time as a childless couple. And then, you evolve and life changes a little. And I went into therapy. I went back into therapy to really get to the bottom of why I was so against having children, and did a lot of work there. Now, Age says that we decided to have kids because I'm a white female and he's a Māori male, and his life expectancy is shorter than mine. And so we had kids so I wouldn't be alone, which sounds really callous and wasn't the fact at all. I wanted to have kids because I needed to leave a legacy behind for the environment. Because, I remember the conversation. We were at the lights on Bader Street in Normandy in Hamilton, and we were talking about the state of the planet. This is just going to give your listeners an idea of M before kids. And I was like, fuck, the planet's fucked. No one's consciously consuming. No one's consciously having babies. We don't need more people on the planet. We can't have kids. And then I said, but if the people who care about this stuff stop having kids, then the planeteers die out, right? So it was not the most romantic journey to parenthood. And we talked about stuff like wanting our child to go to this amazing primary school where they could climb a tree. We didn't think about the newborn days. It wasn't there for us. We didn't know it was something to even consider. We spent a lot of time looking at birth. We went to antenatal classes. We did birth prep. And then we went home with this baby, and he didn't sleep. He didn't sleep. Oh my God, I'm going to cry. And what I had seen of babies was reserved to Home and Away in Shortland Street, where they use a real child for the briefest amount of time possible, because behind the scenes to get a real life baby on TV is a big hassle in the time that their book starts from when they leave the house to when they get back to the house. So they have this really short window of opportunity on TV. So they're always putting the baby in a cot where it goes to sleep, or the baby's in a pram and it's asleep, but it's because it's not a baby, right? It's a doll. Like a doll. And that was my benchmark for what babies did. I'd watch Full House and they'd put the twins upstairs and they'd come back downstairs and continue on with their day, and those twins just were really happy up there. And I bought a cot before Ziggy was even born. I used to walk past the second-hand shop on the way to work every day, in our little row of shops on Bader Street, and it was like a baby second-hand shop, and she always had stuff in the window, and she had this cot in the window. It was like $85, and I was like 3.5 months pregnant at that, and I bought it because we needed it, right? Like, obviously everyone knows you need a cot, and then he just didn't sleep. He did not do what I thought babies were gonna do. And
he got the full baptism of fire.
Oh, Ziggy was fun. I remember we had a song that we used to sing. We used to just pace the lounge, and our lounge is tiny, and we'd hold him and we'd pat his bum and we'd just sing the song that said that Mummy loves you and Daddy loves you and Nana loves you, and it only had 4 lines that were on repeat. It's probably all our brains could manage, just to try and soothe him, because he was so unsettled in the evening. We had that purple crying or witching hour or whatever you want to call it. A few weeks in, we went to a friend's house to help them do something. And AJ, they handed around this big cookie jar, and AJ sat there on their couch and started bum patting the cookie jar because it was just such a movement that we had become so accustomed to.
He's on autopilot. It's kind of like rocking the trolley when you're doing the shopping. No, baby. Or you get your sway on too. I used to get the sway on when you'd stand still and you make everyone seasick, even though you're not holding the baby, but you'd still get your jig on. So this is newborn Ziggy. Did this newborn down, or was it very much like, was this just brand new Ziggy, or was something going on? How was breastfeeding for you? Was that working, or was it what was going on?
Oh, this is before I was even blogging. I didn't start writing about Ziggy till he was about 4 or 5 months old. Breastfeeding. So we had really, really quickly. I had an amazing pregnancy. Like I never got morning sickness. I was walking to work every day. I was walking around the lake up until like 2 days before I gave birth. Pregnancy, mint. Birth, mint. Had a beautiful birth centre. Wore the birth, pushed them out into my arms, hands, brought them out. It's like, wow, you're so ugly, but I love you. All of that was so perfect. And then we went home. Breastfeeding in the birth centre, breastfeeding was okay, and everyone was like, wow, your milk's here really fast. And like my boobs, which have never been very impressive, were all of a sudden amazing. Holy shit, pregnancy. Booby boobs. But I took him home, and feeding him was so painful. And in the beginning, my midwife and my mum and people I spoke to just said, it's a bit sore, just push through, it'll be okay, it's a bit sore. But it was like toe curling, clenching, crying through feeds, and I got mastitis. And I was in bed 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, that really lonely time where your partner's asleep and you're awake with your baby that won't sleep and your boob hurts and you feel so lonely. And I posted about how I felt and my sore boob on my personal Facebook page, and one of AJ's cousins actually said, have you checked Zig for a tongue tie? I was like, I don't even know what a tongue tie is.
Yeah. What is that? Yeah.
What is that? So I Googled symptoms of a tongue tie, and except for the bleeding cracked nipples, because my nips were mint, it was just everything else. The spluttering, the fussy feeding, the pain, everything I could tick off as a symptom of a tongue tie. So we made an appointment and we got him snipped. I have before and after pictures of Ziggy's latch, and he went from this like sucking a straw to this full open mouth gulp. And that fixed it. I mean, Zig fed until, I don't know, it was 3.5 or something like that.
Well done, you.
Yeah. But it didn't fix, I'm air quoting here, it didn't fix the sleep.
Was he even though he was still waking, was he more settled? Like, did it calm any of that distress that you were seeing in the early days that may have been, the struggle of trying to be able to latch and get enough milk? Or do you think even then he was still actually, it was just the way he was at the time?
I remember the before and after of the snip being how he fed, and I remember the pain going from being agonizing to disappearing. It was pain-free. But the change to our sleep happened when he was 4 months old. So we had Zig in the bedroom with us in a bassinet, and when he woke up, I'd get him out of the bassinet, I'd feed him, I'd bum pat him, I'd do everything possible until he went back to sleep again, and then I'd gingerly place him back into the bassinet with some more bum pats. And from Ziggy waking up to feeding to going back to sleep probably took like an hour, and then we did that every 2 hours. And during the day, he catnapped. He was a 30-minute catnapper or a 40-minute catnapper. If I was holding him, if he was like on my chest on the couch, and he'd sleep for ages, but I couldn't do anything. You know, I couldn't eat. I couldn't have a nice shower. And so by about 4 months old was this baby that was waking up all the time. And Age and I were just rolling with it. Like we would just, he's really upset. Let's just hug him. Let's just uppy him. Our whole headspace to it was, we just need to hug this baby. But I was so tired that I had got to the stage of slurring my words, and I didn't feel safe to drive. I didn't like, my cognitive functions were not what they should have been. And so I went and stayed with my nana just to sort of, I don't know, have her in my life for a little while. Have some rest, and yeah. And I went to stay with my nana in Whangarei. And when I got to Nana's house, I realised that she didn't have a bassinet and she didn't have a cot. She just had the double bed in the spare room, right? And that Zig would have to be in the bed with me. And I was terrified, because all I'd ever heard of having my baby in the bed with me was that I'd kill him, basically. And you just did not do that. But I did it. I have the picture of the smiling Ziggy in this bed, and I slept in the same bed with him at 4 months old. And when he woke up to feed, he just had a feed, and then he rolled over and he went back to sleep. And I went back to sleep. And he still woke up all night. But he only woke up to feed, and then the whole process was like 15 minutes instead of an hour. And I woke up in the morning and I felt refreshed. I felt like I had actually managed to sleep.
Yeah, you actually got some cycles in.
I got some cycles, and I didn't know anything about cycles back then. I just he didn't leave our bed for the next 2 years.
And why would he, when it was working so well? Like, it got you some sleep, because that's the name of the game, isn't it? Everybody needs that sleep and rest, and that level of fatigue you got to before discovering that you could share sleep. That is dangerous and brutal for you, isn't it? I got to that point too before I discovered it. Did you know anything about the safety measures? Like you're saying, like you're kind of aware that you were meant to share sleep with your baby. Did you know anything about reducing risk at that time?
Nah, bro, I had nothing to do with the parenting scene. I had not, pre-Zig, the scene I hung out with was I'd go to my mates after work and we'd get stoned and repeat. We'd play beer pong, we'd drink, we'd smoke. I basically left school at 17 and then was rowdy for the next 13 years. And then the day we found out that we were pregnant, and I say I'm including AJ in this, the day I peed on that stick and there were 2 little pink lines, I quit smoking, and that was the transition, you know. And so when we had Zig, we didn't have any parent friends. We didn't have any. I wasn't in any parenting groups on Facebook. Like, all my friends revolved around weekends and parties and sessioning, or I worked with them and I wasn't at work anymore.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Nah, I had one workmate who had a baby around the same time as me. And so, you know, that sort of brings you together. And I remember going around to her place when our little people were maybe 2 months old, and we were having a cup of tea in the lounge, and she said to me, I've just got to go and I've got to put my son to bed. And so she picks up this little one and she walks into the nursery, and he's drowsy but awake, and she puts him into the cot, pats his bum and comes back out to the lounge. And I looked at her and I'm like, what the fuck was that? She's like, he's just going down for a sleep.
I have one of those friends too. It's true. It's for real life that some babies really do just do that. But, you know, they're actually the exception to the rule, though. Like, I know a lot of babies now, and those ones are definitely like the smallest minority. Hey.
Yeah, they are. But at the time, you feel like that's what a baby should do, and so I didn't have.
Surely.
Yeah, I didn't really have a friend that could empathise with what I was going through, because it's like, but it's not hard. Like, I just put them down and they went to sleep, right? Like, come on, Em, sort it out.
Yeah. It's like going to lunch when people could just put their kid in the pram and pull the hood shut, stick a dummy in, the kid's asleep. I'm like, what kind of magic potion did you deliver there? Like, that's not how babies do that, do they?
I was so desperate to get Zig to sleep properly. I even went along to a sleep seminar by like a well-known sleep person here in New Zealand, because it was free, right? And me and the friend whose baby's awesome, and we went along to this sleep seminar with this well-known New Zealand author, and fuck, it was awful. She said that your body is a mattress, and if a mattress can't do it, then you shouldn't be doing it, because what are you teaching your child to rely on? You know, can a mattress bum pat your child? No. Then why are you bum patting your child? How will they ever sleep on a mattress if you're teaching them that they need to rely on bum pats? And she said, well, you know, you could breastfeed them to sleep, but is that a habit you want to be stuck doing forever? And,
babies last forever.
And then she'd say to parents that, you know, you might be trying some new thing, but if you haven't tried for 6 weeks, then you really haven't given it a good go. And it was just, her whole thing was having a super, super strict routine so that the baby knows what to expect, because, you know, when you're 2 months old, you can look at a clock, and that your body as a mum wasn't there to provide comfort, is what it felt like. Like, don't rock and don't sway and don't breastfeed, and for the love of God, don't bring your child into your bed. And it was so, everyone's just nodding like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it just made no sense, because if your little baby is crying and then you hug them and they stop crying, then obviously that's what you need to do, right?
Absolutely.
And if you're sleeping in the same bed as them, and you're doing it safely, and you're not under the influence of anything, and you're breastfeeding and you're waking up with them and you're in that rhythm together, then that's what you do. And there was no one out there saying to do that. Not that I found.
So when you were listening to this, and like, were these thoughts straight in your mind, or do you think at the time you swallowed some of the Kool-Aid, or did you immediately go, hang on a sec, this isn't making sense?
I was so fucking anti. I was listening to everything she said, like, you're just talking bullshit.
I love you, Em. I love that. See, that's the kind of, like, I was missing that part of the puzzle. That's the kind of thing that I would have swallowed whole and taken it on for just another sign that I'd built all these sleep crutches with my child. I did. I went down that track. So I love that about you. You were able to hear that in the thick of it all and call bullshit. That's skillful, lady.
I call bullshit on it because she didn't know Ziggy, and she was not in our house every night, and she didn't see what worked and what didn't work. And I knew what worked, and I knew that all the eat, feed, sleep in the world wasn't going to work. He was just so different to my expectation of what a baby was going to be. We bought a pram, because, you know, that's another thing you buy, right? You buy a cot, you buy a pram. We bought a pram. I had it all in my head. I've been walking to work every day for months. Because when I quit smoking, my workmates didn't know I was pregnant, but luckily I found out I was pregnant on the 12th of January. And so I kind of like New Year's resolutioned it. Oh, look at me, I'm having a health kick. I've quit smoking. I'm going to walk to work every day. And so in my head, once my baby was born, I was going to continue walking. I was going to have my latte and my takeaway cup, and I was going to have my nice active wear and my shoes. I was going to push my baby in a pram down by the river. I got from my house to the Bader Street shops, and Ziggy was screaming. Oh my God, the kid was screaming. He just did not want a bar of the pram. And I toughed it out. I was like, no, we're here, we're doing this. We're going to walk around the skate park. And he just cried. And he cried the next time I tried. And so I gave the pram away because it wasn't working. It wasn't working.
Did you find a solution that did?
Yeah, I was.
You can hear voices there.
My lovely partner's just bringing me lunch.
Oh, how nice is that? Score. Oh, what a legend.
Oh,
where's mine?
There have been some courageous conversations happening for all the listeners. We're in our second lockdown here in New Zealand. We've got 2 young kids and we're both at home. So, yeah. But back to that, did I find something that worked? Yeah, so I was really fortunate that I was living in Hamilton, and Hamilton is a decent-sized city in New Zealand, and so there were lots of available parenting things that I started finding out about. We have a Lalache that met every month, and it was Lalache I went through first because I was having the mastitis and the tongue tie and the breastfeeding issues. And then at Lalache they said, have you heard of our baby wearing meat? We've got I just got goosebumps. Hamilton had the biggest baby wearing meet in New Zealand, run by amazing volunteers. And so I hadn't heard of baby wearing. I had seen it like abstractly. I'd seen like some beautiful picture of this lady in this flowy wrap and thought that looks super hippie and woo, and I don't know what to do with it. I got given a stretchy wrap when Ziggy was born, like a Moby wrap, and I just tied myself in knots and gave up. But then at 4 months, I went along to my first baby wearing meet, and I sat right at the back of everyone. I was tired, but also quite shy and uncertain. I didn't know anyone there. And so when the meet started, everyone is this big rush to grab like the best carriers and to get the great carriers. And one of the volunteers noticed that I was still sitting there. And she said, no, can I help? And I just burst into tears. Oh, my baby won't sleep. She's like, yes, none of our babies sleep.
And did you hug her and go, yay, finally, someone?
That's why we have a baby wearing community, my dear. And we went to the carrier table and there weren't many left. All the buckle carriers were gone and all the adjustable carriers were gone, but there was a Mayday, which is a fabric carrier that you sort of tie around. And she showed me how to do it. And it was amazing. And Ziggy was comfortable because he was on me. And so I took it home and I stood in front of the mirror and I put my baby in the carrier and he fell asleep. And then I walked outside to like my garden with 2 hands that I could do things with in my garden. I stood there.
Freedom.
Yeah, I have pictures from that day. I have a selfie and I'm smiling and I just felt like I'd found the secret to Ziggy, you know? Yeah.
That's pretty magical. Now, I'm just looking at our time and we're coming up to our 30 minutes for the episode. So I'm wondering, because we haven't even got on to hearing about your second little fellow yet. So would you like to come back and have another episode with me?
Yeah, I'd love to. I would love to.
Amazing. So, we might finish off this episode then by hearing your tip that you'd like to share with our listeners. If you could give one tip, what would it be?
Oh, my Ziggy tip would be to block out the well-meaning, well-intended advice from anyone who's not in your house at 2:00 in the morning and just listen to your baby. Just listen to what they're saying, and what they're saying might just be crying. But if they stop crying when you hug them, do it. But also, if you're pregnant and you're listening to this, have these talks before Bub gets here. Talk to your partner about how to share that, because that's something that Age and I really found quite challenging. We've got better now, but have those conversations before you're sleep deprived.
If you can. I think that sounds like really sage advice, Em. So thank you so much for coming along for the episode today. And I'm really looking forward to doing another session with you. And thank you to everybody who's listened along. If you're enjoying the show, if you could drop us a review in show notes, that'd be in the listening app that you're on today. And I was going to say in show notes, I'll be sure to be dropping all of Emily's handles so where we can find you. Do you want to give the listeners a quick rundown? Where can they find you, Em?
You can find me mainly on Instagram. I'm on Instagram under Officially M, and I'm also on Patreon as Officially M. Through Patreon, I have a Facebook community and close friends Insta stories. I also have a garden page. So if anyone is looking for escape and you don't actually want to watch something that's parenting related, The Coastal Good Life, it's just gardening, mulching, and having fun in the garden.
I love it. That's amazing. All right. Well, I'll make sure I get those links off, Em, so we can put them in the show notes for everybody listening along. And looking forward to talking to you again very soon, Em. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carly.
I really hope you enjoyed the podcast today. The information we discussed was just that, information only. It is not specific advice. If you take any action following something you've heard from our show today, it is important to make sure you get professional advice about your unique situation before you proceed, whether that advice be legal, financial, accounting, medical, or any other advice. Please reach out to me if you do have any questions or if there's a topic you'd really like us to be covering. And if you know somebody who'd really benefit from listening to our podcast, please be sure to pass our name along. Also, check out our free peer support group, the Beyond Sleep Training Project, and our wonderful website, www.littlesparklers.org. If you'd like even more from the show, you can join us as a patron on Patreon, and you can find a link for that in our show notes. If listening is not really your jam, we also make sure we put full episode transcripts on our Little Sparklers website for you to also enjoy, and fully captioned YouTube videos as well on our Little Sparklers channel. So thanks again for listening today. We really enjoy bringing this